Welcome to Talking in Stations. It is the May 5th edition. A mis amigos que hablan español, es 5 de mayo. We're not going to do this one in Spanish, unfortunately. I would love to, but we have some news to get through. Pero uno de estos días. Okay, so let's get started here with the crew. We have with us Rundle, the co-host. How you doing?
I'm doing great tonight. Happy Cinco de Mayo. Some people it's Cinco de Drinko. Whatever way you celebrate, have fun.
You have a little news though before we go on with other introductions. What is that?
Yes, a little on the personal side. So if you live in the Dallas Fort Worth area, willing to drive on in terms of COVID vaccinations, my doctor in the North Dallas area is unfortunately throwing Moderna vaccines away 2, 3, or 4 or so a day. If you really want, and you're not able to get on a list or get your shot yet, and you want to have one, find me in game, find me here on Discord. I will shoot you my doctor's name and help you and your loved ones and whoever, maybe not even your loved ones, whoever you want to get vaccinated. I'll get you to that doctor and maybe she can help out and then you can take it from there. So, anyways, just that personal note. I hate to see those things being wasted right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for that. All right. Also, we have Caleb here with us.
Hey guys, yeah, I guess it's not just CCP and the Project Discovery that's saving lives. I guess Rundle is doing so as well.
I am an all-around awesome, nice guy, despite what Nick Bison has to say.
And we have with
He
us,
would make a great CSM candidate.
and we have with us Rich Richmond. How you doing, Rich?
Afternoon.
Okay. And today we're very happy to have Arsia with us. Usually on Sunday show, but she's taking a little detour and talking to us about some lore stuff today. How you doing, Arsia?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Good.
I had my shot today, so I'm a little fuzzy, but it's fine.
Oh.
I just want to change my search engine to Bing for some reason.
I already have my search engine as Bing.
Right, do you find you're getting better reception overall?
Yeah, and I can always like track myself on my phone now. It's pretty nice.
You can find yourself? Okay. Well, yeah, that's awesome. There's some side effects from the vaccinations that we're joking about. Okay, let's actually go to some of the news. Oh, I forgot. We have our news paper writer here with us. How are you doing? Well, I know you as a different name, but Adreland Denard. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Good evening.
Say it with me now. Adreland Denard.
Correct.
Thank you. Sorry about that. Okay, so one more announcement. We have some sound issues that happened on the last show, and it was unfortunate. I'm sorry about the last few shows where they've had some kind of high-pitched sound and even some distortion in voices and stuff like that, where we've taken a whole new look at sound and compressed things. And hopefully we have voices that are balanced so everybody's heard about the same, and we get some of those artifacts out of the way. But let me know if your sound isn't working out very well so that you can tell me and we can fix it. Okay. Let's start with, on this Cinco de Mayo, let's start with some news from Adreland. What do you got on the docket?
Just wanted to briefly talk about what's going on in Pochven. I believe it was discussed on the show a bit yesterday, but currently I live there.
Oh.
And so I woke up yesterday to the gates now being free from basically being open to everyone now, and sent my group into a little bit of a panic. And got told I was going to have to stand gate duty, which I hate. And, basically what was sort of a little exclusive club area is now going to be New Eden subway station. However, all kinds of groups went in there yesterday. It ended up being a lot of PvP going on. It was great fun. I think the main newsworthy item that happened in there was Goon Swarm went in with a Loki fleet.
Cutting out.
Yeah.
Did you cut out for me as well? Yep. Okay.
Cut out for me for a moment.
All right, you're back.
All right. And then for Loki, dramatic pause and
They destroyed I think it was an Azabel from a group, Omega and Friends, Media Labs, Azabel. And so the only reason that's really significant is there's not that many structures in Pochven right now. And the other thing was that I was trying to make sense of this battle report today, and it just sort of devolved into this chaotic brawl where a bunch of corps that are native to Pochven and various wormhole groups showed up, basically looking to grab loot and do PvP, and it was pretty cool.
I think I called it a Donnybrook, right? A good old Donnybrook where just everyone just starts fighting.
Pretty much. I was trying to get it into groups that made sense, and it just doesn't. It was a bunch of groups that usually fight each other, kind of jumping in the area and randomly shooting at each other.
Okay.
So is this literally a complete disregard for all standings? Like if I could target you, I shot you situation, or was there at least some kind of those are my space bros, let's take on the other guys?
Well, I mean, I didn't see any instances of Goon Swarm pilots shooting at each other, but you had Black Flag, you had Triglavian Unity, Strybog Clade, Hard Knocks, Rote Capel. I know some of these guys kind of cooperate sometimes, and what I usually do if I have a confusing battle report is pull up basically who died and who killed who, but it seemed pretty random, so it's kind of a free for all.
All right.
I spoke on the battle yesterday in Pochven, and to my observation, it's a skirmish between 5 or so more groups. They skirmished over the Asbel, and then as soon as the Asbel, prior to the Asbel falling, several of them shot each other, but immediately after the Asbel had fallen, I had seen multiple Hard Knocks ships go down, brought down by Goon Swarm Federation, or more specifically, Russian Thunder Squad, who were in the area.
Right. We confirmed that Strybog is blue with this from Strybog. They're blue with Imperium, basically.
They are. That's the group I'm in.
Yeah. Okay. And I asked how long they had been blue, if that was something that had happened a while ago, and they said, well, our interests aligned a while ago, but the standings set might be a little new. I'm not sure. He wouldn't say.
I even had to ask about it because it's not really, on the goon side of things. When I asked about it, they were like, sort of loosely affiliated, and once I'm a member, I asked Strybog, and they were like, well, we're blue with them. So it's not like Strybog's going to jump out of Pochven and go fight in battles in the main war, but I guess right now their interests align.
Well, I'll reveal a little secret of information communicated down the channels. I believe they've been blue for, well, as far as a few weeks or months after Strybog had gotten majority population in Pochven. So I think they've been blue for quite a while, almost as long as Strybog's existence.
Oh.
Well, Strybog's existence goes back to the invasions. Goons kind of came in for Arsia, so Strybog was already...
Around the time of their existence within Pochven itself, when they began to formalize their operations there, that would be around the time they made mutual terms and non-aggression pacts with each other.
Probably formalized their relationship, but it sounds like they were helping before that. Arsia is pointing that out.
Well, Goons helped in the one system for the Triglavian side. I don't know if they had direct dealings with Streybog, who were one of the major Triglavian alliances during the invasions itself. Obviously, in order to set up in Pochven, you had to put these structures up before it became Pochven. So they were obviously planning to be operating out of Pochven from before it became a thing.
Yeah. Well, that makes sense. And why is that important? Because Pochven is a region that has just been opened up quite a bit. Arsia, you're on Edencom's side of this whole equation. What was your impression of the patch notes that came through recently?
So I think that basically there shouldn't have been a standing lock from the beginning. So I think this is a positive change overall. But I think it's just I think if I'm gonna be as neutral as possible, it's going to breathe a lot of life and activity into a region that might not have been getting as much as it could otherwise.
Yeah. I heard they had less activity than the Great Wildlands.
Yeah, I would believe that. I haven't actually
no statistics.
Compared the two directly.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that might have just been a way of saying no activity or low activity inside of Pochven.
You mean Great Wildlands?
Yeah.
Initiative
Great Wildlands is a big place.
Great Wildlands yesterday.
Yeah, let's go to Great Wildlands, and then we'll go to our major topic. What happened with Initiative, who have deployed yesterday? Caleb actually mentioned it. Caleb, Initiative was doing what? Do you remember?
They're just reinforcing up in that one constellation that I think I mentioned yesterday. Is it one tag VN? I think. So they are trying to stage and take that thing over. They've basically ding-donged the door, and they've had a few smaller brawls, but nothing really significant. So it's a campaign that's still evolving. I don't think there's that much news yet. I've been promised to hear from some of the upper echelon participants as soon as they actually have something newsworthy.
Well, I've read that they've began targeting civilian mining type of infrastructure, raw cores and such, and they have brought a few down of the residents nearby.
Okay, so it's
a harassment campaign, really,
campaign,
right? It's a scaled up harassment campaign. This is not the small scale backfield burning that has been going on for a while. This is a little bit more organized, or supposed to be. So I think they are something like 500 plus strong, manpower wise, like real people, is what I've been told. And again, as I mentioned yesterday, that's of course power that you do not have available to participate in delve shenanigans.
Adreland,
it is reported.
Sorry, Adreland, bring us up to speed.
This was BRT TAC OP. Pappy showed up with like 1,100 ships, blew up their Fortizar, and basically left. Initiative took heavier losses than Pappy did.
Sorry, blew up Initiative's Fortizar?
Yeah, they're staging stuff, right?
Right. They had a Fortizar in BRT TAC OP.
But I thought it just went through the armor timer and they still need the hull timer. Did that happen already?
I'm reading it in one of the channels right now. I've posted the link to the Fortizar in the podcast chat. From what I'm reading, they've destroyed one of the staging Fortizars, and another Fortizar has been brought down to hull. An order has been given out by Darkshines to begin moving assets to the nearest NPC station in Great Wildlands immediately. Apparently, the nearest NPC station is around 11 jumps away.
Yeah, I think Willy was actually mentioning this in passing the other night when he was out having fun, and well, maybe not drinking, but Trash Talk Tuesday is the equivalent of a bar brawl, isn't it?
Pretty close.
Yeah, this was the fuel cartel. It specifically Fraternity took it out of commission.
Oh, okay. Late hour then, I suppose, because that's their time zone. Okay, so basically the Initiative has moved to an area where Slice is near. I think that's the area that, those are the occupants of the area. and started a harassment campaign, but there was a huge form up. I think it was 1.3 thousand, if I'm not mistaken. At least that's what was written in that message from Dark Shines, wasn't it? Or somebody. I saw some intel. It was like a lot of people went to actually went to attack the beachhead that the initiative was using. And wow, it was such a big response that the initiative didn't contest the armor timer. And now we'll see what happens during the hull timer. If the hull timer goes through, that structure gets destroyed. I think what that's done is it's pushed initiative back by a midpoint, which makes it very difficult for them to use capitals, because if they're two jumps back where their capitals can stage, that means they're going to have to put their capitals at risk at a midpoint and then to jump into whatever fight they want to in order to bring those to bear. That can be a strategic disadvantage going forward with this campaign if they continue it. Okay. Let's move on. That was some more news there to Arsia, who's going to tell us about what the heck is going on in, was it Kahah?
It was Kahah. Yep, the very specific reason why it was Kahah too. But so for those who might not have seen today, there was a news article that came out today that said that the Minmatar Republic had come out saying that they had discovered that the equilibrium of mankind had been responsible for the dreadnought attacks within the past week. As if you were following the live events that have happened in the last week, there were four attacks where capital ships attacked planets. 3 of them were in high sec, and each one of the attacks corresponded with a mercenary group aligned with one of the empires. So today, after that news article that was player-driven came out, it was the Minmatar Republic that discovered the plot because players gave the most materials from the dreadnoughts that attacked the planets to the Minmatar Republic. They got information from 3 of the 4 attacks from the players. And so, because on the official forums, NPCs from the Amar Empire, the Minmatar Republic, the Galente Federation, and Concord asked for players to contract them over anything they could obtain from the dreadnoughts. The Amar Empire also got some of this stuff, and the Minmatar Republic got the biggest diversity of stuff from the various attacks, so they're the ones who pieced it together story-wise.
I see. So these were like loot drops from the ships that were participating in these events.
Yes, the NPCs asked specifically for the loot drops from the events, and players obliged with whatever they could get their hands on, and that determined who got the little brownie points in the story, basically. It's going to be the same story on it, but you got to decide who got the little brownie points. And almost, not directly, but just like shortly after that news story dropped, CCP goes live on Twitch, and it's an avatar and a bunch of dreadnoughts bombing the planet of Kahah 3. And it's revealed that the avatar pilot is a large Cicade. If you were paying attention to New Attack, which was the first attack of the series of high-sec attacks last week, it said right before the New Attack, there was an attack on Enos Ilix, and the prisoners, Alar Chakade and Orlan Zashev, went missing. Well, we found Alar Chakade. He showed up in a Titan, now in the Corporation for the Equilibrium of Mankind. A lot of people were not quite sure who the Equilibrium of Mankind were because they're not one of the major factions represented in your standing screen. What they are is a 1,500-year-old heretical offshoot of the Amar religion, founded by Osilian Ardishapur, who is one of somebody within one of the royal who used to be within one of the royal families of the Amar Empire. Basically, what the EOM believe, the Equilibrium of Mankind, EOM, is that they need to destroy all the rest of human life that doesn't believe in their religion in order for God to open the gates of paradise, which is presumably the Eve Gate. They're featured in some missions. They've been featured in news stories here and there throughout the years the game happened. This is not the first time they've basically glassed a planet with a Titan. The first time was in 2006 when they used a Titan's doomsday on Reichard 5 and destroyed most of the life on the planet.
Oh.
But they had been responsible for not only the attack today, but at least three of the attacks that happened this last week. Because all of the Dreadnought pilots from the high-sec attacks in Tanu and Terihev and Garani Fa were present today in the Dreadnoughts. It was the same pilots that were in the other Dreadnought attacks, except for the one in Flosis Wind. A lot of people suspect the one in Flosis Wind was a real attack by Sarum, but we didn't get the logs handed to the Minmatar guy. The Amar actually got them, and it was announced that the Flosis Wind logs were kept confidential.
Oh.
Right. So a lot of people are asking about the fits on the ships, why they were railgun and shield fits, and
unusually an armor ship, right?
Well, he's been in jail for a while. Maybe he
No.
This
is on purpose. If you go to any of the missions where you fight the equilibrium of mankind, they are shield tanking Amar ships with hybrid weapons. And I saw a lot of outcries, and you saw a lot of outcries. CCP doesn't play their game. No, it's just you don't play the game because they fit the ships exactly like they should be to be equilibrium of mankind ships in accordance with the lore of equilibrium of mankind. Of course, it's not the ideal way you should fit your avatar, right? You shouldn't fit your avatar or your revelation like that. But the fact that CCP fit them exactly like the NPCs should, based on how the NPC ships actually are when you encounter them in game, is a fantastic touch. And I commend them for giving us these meme shield tanks avatars that our peers were giddy about this, honestly. But you can call the EOM a bad fitting, but it's not CCP's mistake. It would be the EOM's in character mistake. Anyway, who is Alar Chakade and why is Kahah 3 the target? Alar Chakade was previously, before he was captured on Flosis Wind, while serving in the with the Amar military forces on the planet. Alar Chakade was a member of the Theology Council, and before that he was a duke, a baron, and basically the right-hand man to King Khanid at various times. He first appeared in 2015 during the Amar tournament, which was where all the players who were interested in participating tried to pick one of the royal families to represent, and then that's how the Empress that we have now was picked by the tournament with the players. He was the NPC contact that determined King Khanid's potential champions. There was drama back then in 2015 because one of the potential champions was a Blood Raider RPer. Oh. And Alar Chakade fought with the Amar RPers back in 2015. Other Amar NPCs stepped in and kind of put the lid on it and stopped all the infighting. He reappeared a few years later in 2018 and started picking fights with all the RPers right before all the news stories about Blood Raiders attacking various planets happened. And the first planet that was attacked was Kahah 3, which is the planet that was bombed today. Alar Chakade was assigned to respond to the attack on Kahah 3. It was attacked with Death Glow, which set all the slaves who were affected with the drug Vitok into a rage for a certain period of time. And Alar Chakade basically gave the order to artillery shell all of the rioters. So, like, these people were affected by a drug, presumably from the Blood Raiders, although now you wonder, was it the EOM? Basically, he mass murdered millions of people on Kahah 3 as a Khanid general. More like, in layman's terms, he was a Khanid general. He mass murdered people on Kahah 3. He was promoted to a constellation holder when the Khanid kingdom was given the responsibility of watching over Aridia, the region. He was given a constellation in Aridia. Then he moved up to be on the Theology Council, which is kind of like a Mars Supreme Court. Kind of like their Supreme Court, or kind of like their... Yeah, I'd say it's closest to their Supreme Court. It's not 1-to-1, but basically a big, important Amar legislative body. But all this time, every player character who got into a fight with this guy had something that was tied to them in their story, their personal stories that we wrote, attacked in the news. Arsia had her family firebombed after shit-talking this guy on the forums. Right?
Yikes.
And I'm not the only player. Like, this seems to be something that was thought out a long time ago, from 2015, when the guy was picking very suspicious people to represent King Khanid, to 2018, when this guy had a bunch of planets bombed, to now when he breaks out of jail and that fight feels like a climax to kind of like a story arc, but maybe we'll see more.
Is your family all right?
No. Basically, it was left vague, so I got to decide, and then I decided her brother, her aunt, and her brother's children died.
Oh, dark.
Yeah.
Nice role play. Go ahead.
The attacks of today started around 2000 Eve time, and we had multiple revelations and an avatar come in and attack Kahah 3. They began actually firing indiscriminately at various different people, including the planet and other capsuleers, who valiantly rallied to attempt to fight off this terrorist group. All the while, Chicade repeatedly launched doomsday attacks on the planet of Kahah 3, killing countless civilians. After about 50 minutes, this horrific attack was put to an end when Royal Commodore Araz Namaraya of the Royal Khanid Navy brought his Aeon in to lead and command the Royal Khanid Navy forces to bring down the Avatar with the assistance of hundreds of other heroic capsuleers.
So that wasn't the first time we ever saw that Aeon either. That pilot in that specific Aeon in that system has popped up once before. Back in 2008, at the end of the original Kahah arc, where Chicade was mass murdering people on the planet, some of the Minmatar RPers, Ashra Khan and an unaffiliated RPer, posted on the forums that they were going to try to land on the planet and have basically an insurrection. And so they brought this freighter that they were planning to land at the planet. They plopped it right next to the planet. And CCP was basically popped out in an Aeon and killed the freighter. Right? CCP came out in an Aeon and killed the freighter.
So rude.
There was a Concord NPC, Overig Drust, was in a marshal sitting in front of the planet saying, You can't land here. The Minmatar NPCers suicide ganked the Concord guy. And then a little bit after that, the Amar and the Minmatar started shooting each other based on... It was some like faction... Ashra Khan's in faction warfare. And some of the Amar faction warfare's participants were on the other side, and that was back before the war deck changes. So like the people outside of faction warfare could serve as Logi and just go suspect without getting concorded. So there was a bit of a scrap there. Ashra Khan more or less won the scrap, but the Khanid NPC in the Aeon, the same Aeon that we saw today, blew up the freighter, so the objective was lost. Although the suicide gank on the Concorde guy is one of the best kill mills that has ever been generated, and you should probably check that out.
Well,
I posted it in the podcast channel for you.
thanks. The Eon took a shot to the face, right? Like the Doomsday from the Avatar shot it directly in the face and just scorched the whole front of the ship, which is massive if you think about it. Things the size of New York City or something, and like, you know, half of it was just roasted from that blast, but it did end up surviving because the Titan ended up going down. That was worth watching.
With this in mind, do you think this will affect the future of the faction warfare? As of right now, we know that a lot of faction warfare bordering systems are currently under lockdown by elite Empire forces, and access to it by some people is nearly impossible.
So I think similar situations were the basis of changes to the Concord Militia War Powers Act the last time we got faction warfare updates. So I'm not saying it's definite, but it's entirely possible that rising tensions in the empires can always be used to justify faction warfare changes. Whether or not they definitely are is anybody's guess, and yours is as good as mine. But it could definitely be used as a springboard for faction warfare changes, because this whole arc has had rising tensions among the empires. Even if three of the attacks were definitely false flag attacks by EOM, the empires were this close to jumping on each other, and that kind of you don't just de-escalate overnight and everything's fine like that. Most people still think the attack on Vlossiswin was a legit attack by Sarum, but the empires are not happy with one another, and that could definitely mean changes to faction warfare.
Well, there's just one area where I think you're in error, and that is saying that Rich's guess is as good as yours. I would like to, on behalf of the community, take exception.
I think your guess is far, far better than mine.
So, this
kidding.
could be used to justify faction warfare changes, but it could be used to justify so many more things. I might be able to make more educated guesses on exactly where the story might go, but not always.
Yeah. Well, it
it
was just an opportunity to poke at Rich.
Yeah.
I was going to say, Rich, that's what it feels like to be shanked by Matterall, by the way. Right there.
But they could use the story to justify any sort of number of changes to the game.
Yeah.
And faction warfare changes are an obvious route to go for anything where the Empire.
Well, there was some
stuff.
dev talk about this earlier. I think a couple of weeks ago, he showed up. I don't know what show it was, but he said something along the lines of, there is some stuff we would like to do to faction warfare. And it was almost like he was musing about there's some fixes. I would like to take a crack at faction warfare, but that sounded like it was off in the distance.
So what?
Yeah, Rattati, I'm sorry. Yeah.
So what really makes me hopeful is I am definitely one of the foremost proponents to giving faction warfare love, and I definitely hope there's a lot of love coming for faction warfare. But I've also seen a lot of stuff that points to this isn't just Delegate Zero messing with us. Like this, I know it's not just Delegate Zero in these events. It's at least Convict and Fozzie and Delegate Zero and probably a bunch of other people who I don't know are involved. But CCP has a live events team again. So I'm very hopeful that this isn't just 1 week of live events. I hope this is an every so often thing, because this really makes the world feel alive and gives our peers, for every 15 minutes of a CCP event, our peers have months and months and months that they can work off of to
Like your
Make our own
family
stories, yeah.
like your family getting attacked. Like, hey, deal with that. Tell us what happens, and then you get to make up the story. That's
Yeah.
interesting. Rundle, did you want
And
to
I
jump?
am
Oh, go ahead.
no.
Arsia,
Go
finish.
ahead.
All right, then.
I was
Rundle.
just gonna say I'm sorry. I'm very, very thankful that, like, because not everybody is 100% on. Oh, most people wanted it not to be a false flag attack. People wanted it to be the Empire's, and not like, oh, it's the EOM. But people are in general really happy that we had these events, and that CCP shows that they care about the lore, and they have one of the best intellectual properties as far as story and world and lore goes of any fictional universe out there.
Hold that thought. By the way, EVE Online was the basis for, if you've seen it, The Expanse, which was supposed to be like EVE Online, supposed to be a video game, but they ended up rolling it into a show. So if you like The Expanse, that kind of sci-fi bleak world and different factions was based on EVE Online. Rundle, did you want to get in on that? Because I do want to go back to the events and how they could be improved. Go ahead.
Well, so I did a little postulating last night. Maybe this is a little too much tinfoil, but I recognize that we even touched a bit on this last night, right? The tools are in place to have security status of zones be manipulated by CCP, to have kind of a dynamic border. I think a comment in the chat, it kind of said the same thing, right? So these live events could take on very dynamic meaning in terms of timing and how it impacts. You could have a high sec flip to a low sec just to support a war or to support some additional faction warfare. And I think long term, I think they're even putting themselves in a position, as even like with Triglavian space, sort of kind of as an experiment, to be able to have managed ownership of space. Nullsec is purely owned by the players. Highsec is purely owned by Empire, and a touch of love to the lowsec could be, kind of managed ownership that to enhance on that faction warfare. And then if you flip it, it flips maybe to your faction, but it maybe flips in terms of security status, or there's all sorts of things they can do. And the lore and the events kind of seem to be pointing towards that kind of redrawing of the map in a managed way. That's what I think's happening.
I think whatever is happening,
or I hope anyway.
Whatever is happening, it's really refreshing, because the RP community has a lot of what people would refer to as bitter vets, and we've for a long time felt that a lot of what we love about the game hasn't been given as much attention as maybe we think it should have. And even some of the most bitter of bitter vets, even some of the ones who maybe prefer it not have been false flag attacks, are still very, very optimistic about not just that we had a string of events, but the fact that, like, there's been changes to, like, the fiction portal for things that have been wrong for a long time. And it just seems like, and like, there's been a log of changes to the fiction portal posted. We've noticed the work CCP has started to put in. Like, I run a roleplay Discord for EVE role players, and in like the last 2 weeks, 3 or 4 members of CCP who weren't in it joined, and it's like, this is suspicious, you guys, right? But everybody's pretty happy with.
Well, let me try to get Caleb in here before he falls over dead from being awake at 3 a.m. Were we talking earlier about this? You like this event, right?
Oh, I love it, especially if it hints at what I suspect is coming, and it's very much on the same page as some of the things that Rundle just said. I mentioned the tension thing between the empires. The fact that this is then potentially pointing at some sort of false flag, which is almost like saying, "Oh, not really," but the language being used, the drama that's actually showing up with these events, I think is hinting at something sizable, because even though Arsia just said that now they have an event team, yeah, but if you're using that, you must be using it for something relevant, right? And again, the Triglavian story has mm, gone a little bit into the background. I still think something big is going to happen with that, and I think this ties into the whole language and the almost prophetic language being used by Allah in this event. The Heaven's Gate, opening the doors to paradise. Um, and then, of course, back to the whole Triglavian origin story, where they're actually from. We talked about the fact that something changed in the database when it comes to Jovian space. There's so many things that this could hint at. And of course, we know already that EOM is going to play a large role in what's coming. Again, this is cheating and looking into the crystal ball. And ironically, there was also a bit of lore stuff that actually pointed at a crystal ball. So I'm seeing this turning into what we will be entertained with for at least the rest of the year by CCP, and of course tomorrow I'm expecting some sort of final crescendo to all of this. I'm just wondering,
Why
how can you
tomorrow?
top this? Well, because tomorrow is the actual anniversary for EVE Online, except of course for the Euros that didn't get the game until like 2 weeks later. But that's just an old grudge between me and Hilma. So so the point is, tomorrow something bigger must happen. And how do you top this one, Arsia? This is literally NPCs fielding Titans when Pappy and Imperium are just slow boating in the background, not doing anything, just poking a bear.
I mean, I've always been more interested in what the NPCs do than what the null blocks do.
That's been the case for a
my
long time.
Yeah. Play, and that's nothing against the null blocks. We just have different things we do in game. But
You're playing a different game.
we kind of are. I mean, there are definitely RPers in the null block, so don't get me wrong there. They are as much RPers as I am, right? But they're, like, I was watching today, and a lot of people don't know who EOM are. They don't know why EOM don't have good fits. And I don't know how you top, like, the planet destroying Titan death ball, but I do think that CCP took some feedback from the invasions, and one of the things the invasions had was very little interaction with, like, events. Like, there were some events, like there was an NPC character in Skarkon who showed up a couple times and yelled at us, and we had the Skarkon evacuation event. That was CCP responding to a player post. But, like, when Niarja popped, why wasn't they had a character made for the head of EdenCom for Cassia Volcaneer? Why wasn't she in the system yelling at people to do stuff? Why wasn't Zoria Triglov in the system yelling? This is because there are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people. That's like the perfect time to whip out a couple characters and start screaming. Like, they don't even have to do anything. Just there's so much that you can do to spice up what goes on in these storylines.
Well, the problem to me, okay, so I'm looking at it from a gameplay perspective and like a player-client perspective, and I was thinking about this as just not to poo-poo this, because I like this sort of stuff. I like the effort involved, but it just feels like fan service, right? That Titan was going to die. There was no question that Titan was going to die. It was just like they're feeding fish. Right? They're just throwing fish food into the pond, and all the fish food is going to get eaten. And that's the end of the story. And it feels like,
but that's like,
why don't some of these guys get away?
Like, well, just to bring Rich on this a little bit. This is like when you're doing campaigning as a GM, right? Some events you want to happen. Even if you almost have to strong arm it, because if it's part of a bigger story that you want to happen in a certain way, you kind of rig it a little bit. And this is what I see this being. It's almost rigged. These events are supposed to happen this way to be the whole precursor for all the stuff that's about to come. And I suspect that we're going to see more Niarja-esque lore stuff, right, where it actually ties into player events. And let's not forget that Niarja fell because of Nullsec interference, right?
Better yield to Arsia there.
Not at all.
Because she
This
wants to
guy
kill
got
me.
away for 6 years. This guy got away for 6 years.
Okay, that's a big event. Okay, that was going to die. I'm not thinking about that as much as I'm thinking about the previous episodes. This was a crescendo kind of, because that character was real. He had a history, and it was neat to see him and I like to see a Titan bomb a planet. That
And
was very well.
he's a clone. He's probably not dead.
Oh, okay. Well, then they
Right.
just took that point away then. But for me, it is like, okay, here's the thing about...
We don't know, because he was a war clone. He wasn't a capsuleer, but maybe he's a capsuleer now. Maybe he is dead. I don't know.
One of the attractive things about story is not knowing how it's going to end. So when I just see some ships, some dreadnoughts in the system, and players are coming to kill them, to me, it's like feeding fish. They're going to eat...
The dreadnought dying is not the story. What EOM does next, what the Empires do next, is the story.
I would love to see a couple of those dreadnoughts actually get away. Like, that's interesting. Now it feels like texture. Now it doesn't feel like fan service. It feels like the world's alive, you know?
One of the busiest places at an aquarium is the fish feeding tank, though. People love it. People love to feel involved, even if it is just throwaway. I think you're discounting.
But the petting zoo's for kids. That's
yeah. Well, we're a bunch of space kids in this regard. I think you're discounting the real effect of just being able to have part of a story accelerated, and then and just to be able to even be a part of it and watch, and then feel like a part of it as a role player, or even just as a spectator who isn't going to role play it.
And not all the NPCs do get destroyed. There's been we're going back a long way, but there's been escort events, and there's been NPCs that pop up who we weren't trying to kill, who might have died, might have not died. There are maybe sometimes there needs to be the ability for them to die or for them to live, but there also has to be times when you can't do anything about it, so the universe feels bigger than you.
Well, if they were sorry, go ahead, Rich.
I think it breathes life into the game because you can actually interact and see the permanent effects on the game. You're actually doing something that affects the future. An NPC does actually die, as seen with the previous Samar Empress. So I think there's a very real, very living, breathing world that's been interacted with.
Yeah.
And will we see some of these people escape in the future? I'm not sure. But this time, what you might not know is during this event in Kahah, capsuleers were actually fired upon. In all the previous dreadnought attacks, they exclusively fired upon the planet. But in this case, they engaged the rest of the capsuleer ships. Quite a few people lost their own ships attempting to protect Kahah.
Yeah.
They fired at other ships in the other events.
Yeah, I think they did.
They definitely
did.
Sometimes they did, yeah. But this is
smart bomb with that
to me.
Titan,
This
please.
is this is very similar to the landmarks and these sort of things that you do love. I know that because you talk a lot about them, and you do love landmarks and these things that set up this lore. This is how this starts. This is how these sorts of things ultimately make their way into the game.
Yeah. My criticism is not lore. I like it lore. That's all flavoring for this. What I like is not knowing the ending to the story. And I don't like wars that are one-sided. I didn't like the First World War B. I didn't like the glassing of tribute. Those wars were done before they started. And that's why a lot of people were like, this kind of sucks. You know, it's just a grind. And so same thing with NPCs, the same standard. I don't want to know how this ends. If you put out 3 dreads, I don't want to feel like that's just feeding players to come and kill those things and to get kill mails. Like, give me a break, get one out. Like, have them fight back. Have them use technology even we haven't seen or something. Like,
Gotcha. Okay,
smart bomb the hell out of everybody.
Difference. I see where you're going with it then. Okay.
I'm way too adamant about this.
Be less.
I'm really not this passionate about it, but I'm thinking like this is low-hanging fruit to make the story more complicated.
Spawn bigger diamond fleets for their support fleets, because people are saying the caps are completely unsupported. That's not entirely true. Like in Tanu, there was a diamond fleet of Brutor.
Be less predictable in how the story is going to go.
Vanguard,
be more. Yeah, be
Yeah,
more
that's-
destructive, more outwardly back. Yeah, I see where you're going with it all.
Yeah,
This
that's
is
where I'm going.
Manuel
Akrath is saying,
saying,
I love petting zoos, so I could be wrong.
I think this is Manuel saying to CCP, if you're doing these live events with actual piloted ship, would you please kill some more players?
Yeah. Remember, players love to be killed. That's what you said, CCP. So kill some players.
Yeah, that's what CCP says. So
Yeah.
kill some more players, please.
So, Horde Dreads next time.
Hod dreads and smart
No,
bombs.
I think
also-
someone
fight
actually
back.
said that if these had
Yeah.
been fitted properly and actually responded properly, the majority of the players that were actually engaged would have been completely out and killed.
But another point with the EOM specifically is they are just trying to kill as many people as they can in a ball of fire. That's very on brand for EOM, because they don't care if they die. They did their godly duty to murder people indiscriminately.
Right. And see, I think
so,
you
like-
preserve that, though. That's the last point on it. For me, you preserve the suicide nature of that cult if they all go in and explode, one-way mission kind of stuff. But because every event we see, everybody always dies, then that just isn't very special. It's like,
That's for these dreadnought attacks on the planet, these specific 4 events, that's true. But for EOM dreadnought hitting a
better.
planet events are not. Like, for the Skarkon evacuation event and the Seikal fighting the, I think it was the Angels above in Skarkon, there was NPC and live actor bowheads warping around the system. And one got caught by the Trigs and almost died. They were saved by players, and the NPC who had previously bashed the players kind of took back their shit talk. It was actually a really cool story where the NPC was saved by the players, and they could have easily died.
cool. That's cool. I like that a lot. Yeah, I'm maybe pushing the point more than I should, but here's the reason. If you watch Game of Thrones, when it started, you loved that because there was a sense of terror. You didn't know who they were going to kill. They might even kill the lead character for all you know. And there was a sense of like, nothing is safe and I'm going to be surprised. That dwindled over time. Same thing with The Expanse. You didn't know who was going to get it until, the last few seasons. And then like none of these guys are going to get it. And so it
You
becomes
just
a little
want
boring.
one of those Green Fire episodes, right? you want Jita 4-4 to burn with Green Fire or something.
I think when you have a game with this much IP potential and this many players, that you want to keep players on their toes. And if you're going to say Eve is tough, Eve is really hard, and anything can happen in it, then every once in a while players should, get stuff kicked out of them.
Also, like,
And
the
it's part of the
main
world.
point of these events, it's easy to look at it and say the main point of these events is these events, but the main point of these events is what people take away from these events to do with the other players. So, like, I don't just like the events because the events themselves are cool. They are. But once again, like, what I'm excited about is this event happens, and then, like, the Minmatar RPers and the Amar RPers are like infuriated with each other in character, right? So now we have justification to launch wars against each other, and because we think the Flossus Wind attack was a real attack, and there's like immediately a big drama thread on the in character forums. Like I said before, like the main point of these attacks for me is what stories I can take. What stories I can make with the other players using the shared background that CCP hands us.
Yeah, that's true.
This
I know
is
what
a
this
shared
is.
background.
So they give you the clay
I think
for
I figured it
the
out.
story, and you get to work with it. Yeah, go ahead.
Maderon, I think I figured out what this is. This is CCP actually reminiscent and missing Burn Jita, and now they're going to do it themselves.
God, if Jita
Once
gets
every
attacked.
year.
I've never
Burn
liked
Jita
Burn. I've
from
never liked
CCP.
Burn Jita. I always thought that was trash gameplay because I don't like its motivation. I don't like where it came from. I don't, sure it made some headlines, it lit the imagination of people, but I always thought it was terrible. It was, we could go into Burn Jita. We can go into the history. We can talk about why it happened if you want to, but I never
Not
thought that was a good
unnecessary.
thing.
I'm just saying that the destruction numbers and the entertainment value of interdictions of any kind, big drama, big violence, even when it spills over into high sec, when it's what I would almost call meaningful. I'm actually a huge fan. I love the Hulkageddon stuff. I
Hulkageddon's
love
different.
Jita. Yeah, but
The
the point is that they are very related.
No, the motivation was
the
different. Go
one
ahead.
thing, the one criticism I will give is that, and I know this is super hard, but events in different time zones, right? It's all they've all been around the same time this last week, and I know it's super hard for a group in Iceland, but like I'm not sure there's been a proper USTZ event since like the incursions, maybe, when people were definitely all-nightering during the incursions for those events.
The first few incursions that came out were like player events, right? Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, there was a big string of player events for incursions. Yeah, when that came out, that was a big.
The first Revenant was given out at that point, or
And
dropped his
actually
loot.
something related to that, Arsia. I don't know if you want to touch upon it, but Fozzie actually posted about CCP and player events.
Oh.
Yeah, Fozzie's definitely among the event team that I see mentioned in places now. And yeah, no, I'm overall super happy about this.
Yeah, good. Are there people around you?
He just posted. He's posted on the forums that he wants to double down and actually have CCP support and integrate more with player events in the
Absolutely.
future. This is why I mentioned it, and people can go and read that post themselves on the Evo forums.
Yeah, I think, as I said before, overall our peers are very supportive of what's happened in the last couple weeks. Like even some of our most bitterest of bitter vets, people who've been playing since like the game launched, who have been bitter since 2 days after the game launched, super happy about it.
Yeah, I think some of this stuff
I'm sure there's.
It has great appeal.
I'd say I'm sure there's some people who aren't, but in general, go ahead.
No, spend some dev time on this, guys. Put some story in it. You guys have great and talented people. You guys have amazingly smart PhD level people all over the place, and we trust you to make a good game. For me, low hanging fruit, and maybe not this case. So I'll watch in the future, but make the story a little less obvious that the players are just getting served a dish of things to put on their kill boards, right? I know you want to involve people, but I, as a fan of the story, want something a little more unpredictable.
I mean, the kill mails are just like a memento that I was here. Like, no, does anybody? I know people do, but are people going to look at this Titan I did 0.1% of damage to in high sec? I'm kind of a good PvPer, you guys. No, it's like a memento. It's like a souvenir.
I think.
Right?
I
you need to change kill mails
with Matterall's angle on this. I do feel like CCP are using their NPC stuff and their lore stuff as red shirts, right? Things that are just going to get burned out. Where if you take any other role-playing game scenario when you're playing in a specific set world, the actual NPCs are usually the people you want to avoid because they're completely overpowered, right? So it's almost like CCP are doing the other way around.
Look at Rich's face; he's a dungeon master.
Also,
I don't know about you. Okay, as for these kills, I don't know about you, but that's 42 points. 42 points for this, 42 points for this, 31. That's a lot of Z-kill points for me.
I'm happy for you.
I like this. I like this because there are a lot of things that you can do in a game that only you, the developer, are able to orchestrate. There's a limitation to what players can orchestrate in a game.
All right, so I do want to say that I think you guys, Caleb and Matterall, are hyper-focusing on a tiny subset of the four Dreadnought events, which were basically just feeding Dreadnoughts and a Titan. From at least 3 of them from the same faction in the same storyline in the same week, when there's been a multitude of other different types of events where NPCs haven't, like Kahah, when the super carrier came out and killed the player. The super carrier lived, it came back today, right? The players couldn't kill the super carrier 3 years ago. It was back today to fight the Titan, right? So that does happen. And I think you're working on a really small sample size of just the beginning of what's to come. And I would be very surprised if it's not varied and unpredictable.
I'm convinced, Arsia, you just turned me around on that issue, especially because EOM are, a cult that will kill themselves. When
Yeah, I think it has to do mostly with EOM, with the just, we're suiciding dreadnoughts to kill people because our people are going to super mega heaven and...
Would like that to be a little more obvious, but you totally turned me around on it. You're right.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
But like 3 years ago, that super carrier, players could have killed it. It aggressed somebody. They could have came back with a hick, right?
Yeah. Keep up the good work.
It lived, it came back.
Yeah, that's good.
I'm a huge fan of games like Call of Cthulhu, where every time you hear anything that's like the actual important stuff, your default is run away from it because it's just always or almost always going to be more dangerous than you. I would like to see that when it comes to lore team stuff, that it actually requires you to really start rage pinging all your friends, because otherwise CCP, when they're flying their stuff, is just going to wipe the floor with you, because I think that would like actually be more entertaining.
I would like to see them be boss, right? I mean, one of my favorite things.
Yeah, exactly. They should be lead. They should be
the boss.
Horribly difficult to kill.
Here's the reason. Everybody can get behind CCP being the boss. Like, everybody can.
I'm just saying, CCP is pretty good at their own game. They've gotten more kills with Rail Revelations than anybody else.
Yeah. Sometimes I feel like, they're trying to be friendly to players or collegial or whatever else. And sometimes I just want you to be a parent CCP. I just want you to be the boss. In fact, when Blackout came out, I was starting to write an article. I never finished it because I was writing it for INN. I was going to give it to them as like a gift. And then I thought, these guys don't want to hear from me. So I never finished it. But I wrote like 6 drafts of it because I kept revising it. And I started out, Caleb, you'll like this, with a quote from a Depeche Mode song called Never Let Me Down Again, where the lyric is, he's taking me wherever I want to go as long as I remember who's wearing the trousers. And I thought, CCP with Blackout has put the trousers back on, and they're in charge, and they're going to show you a great time. They're going to show you the world, but you got to remember they're in charge. Of course, the song's about heroin, but it's close, right? CCP.
Well, I'm just going to reply to that with Never Let Me Down is actually a David Bowie song, so you're wrong.
It's Never Let Me Down again.
I know.
Once again, people asking about the railguns. The railguns are on the ships because EOM, lore-wise, use hybrid weapons on Amar ships.
All right. Well, anyway, we decided to have some fun with that topic and have that discussion. I think it's worthwhile. Love the RP stuff. CCP. Arsia, you look like you were going to say something. You have anything else?
Not off the top of my head. Most
All
people
right.
have questions.
Just relax. Yeah, if you guys have any more questions, put them in there now. We're about to wrap up the show. Rich, Mr. Dungeon Master.
I made a mistake. It turns out these dreads have killed people, just not that many. In this case, they've killed a lot more in Kahah.
Yeah, well, they bombed the planet. They were busy bombing the planet, which was cool to see.
No, he means killing players. Yeah, they got a bunch of kills actually.
In the previous one they only got 3. In this case, they got more than 3.
Oh yeah, Chad is asking, is the last part of the stream, is that actually supposed to be a law?
You need to ask that again. I didn't.
What happened? I missed the last part.
Okay, there was just a very short, I think 3-second video where he basically comes out and says the heaven, the gates to paradise is open.
It's time to open the gates of heaven.
Oh, that's the quote from Osilian Ardashapur, which is the leader of the EOM. So like maybe they hack the transmission at the end or something.
It's just because Allah in chat
Yeah.
was saying that pretty much throughout the entire engagement, right? He was basically screaming, "Holy, holy, holy! The gates of
Oh
paradise
yeah.
is open." And then it also got out there on the transmission on the video just in the end. I'm just wondering if that hologram is him or if it's the one that he's quoting.
Well, a large Chicade is the Titan pilot. I think if they showed a hologram on the stream, it would be really easy to verify because a large Chicade looks like a pretty identifiable angry Khanid guy. So it's probably, I'm gonna guess it's Osilian Artishipper, the EOM leader or the EOM founder. I don't know if he's still alive, but he might still be alive. Cloning.
I think he's vanished for quite a while now.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they did kill players, but as I was saying, they killed few players because they were busy bombarding the planets, which makes sense, right? They had a mission to bombard those planets. I wish they'd done heavy damage to the planets. It was kind of like light damage, but those things are huge. You got to respect them. Got to respect their firepower in the literature.
Oh,
Okay.
that's definitely Osilian Artishipper, that video that was linked, because that doesn't look like a large Chicade at all.
Yeah, and the ship was called the same thing, right? The Titan was called Gates of Heaven.
Yeah.
Right.
Gates of Paradise, but yeah.
Yeah, that's a very EOM phrase.
Awesome.
Just before you wrap up, Meryl, I think if Rundle wouldn't mind covering the exploit.
Yep. Just exactly. I have it queued up. Thank you. Like we're almost sharing a brain, which is scary, you dirty galante. So since we're role playing tonight, of course. So the CCP issued a real exploit notification warning. It's in the news. So this isn't tied to the lore. This is really for real gameplay. Right. I'll read it here. Greetings. It's come to our attention that some players are deliberately preventing observatory flashpoint sites from being spawned. Effective immediately, the preventing of observatory flashpoint sites being spawned is considered an exploit. If you witness this behavior, please contact customer support by sending in a ticket to the rules and policies exploits category. Players who prevent the sites from spawning will be subject to disciplinary actions as per the terms of service. So, if you are involved with observatory flashpoints in and around, screwing with them, you might want to stop. If you're doing them, you see someone screwing with them, you now have an avenue for reporting. So, and that is in the news. You can go search for EVE Online news, and that should pop up for today's news.
All right. Well, I think that wraps it up for us. Arsia, thanks for coming around. Appreciate it. And Caleb, thanks for staying up, as well as you, Rich. And Rundle, thanks for covering that last bit of news and hanging out with us. And thank you guys for showing up. Appreciate you guys tuning in. We will be back tomorrow with more Talking in Stations. Until then, fly safe.
Cinco de Drenko, have fun.
That's right.
Revenge of the Fifth.
Cinco de Mayo.